Welcome to Module 4 of the GTFCC online course on the identification of PAMI for cholera control. In this module, we will provide you some insights on how to organize a successful PAMI stakeholder validation. After completing this module, you will be able to explain the objectives of the stakeholder validation, describe how to prepare a PAMI validation workshop, describe how to run a PAMI validation workshop, and understand approaches to foster consensus on the list of PAMI. The PAMI stakeholder validation is an important moment for the identification of PAMI for cholera control. This is when a priority index threshold is decided, and optionally, additional PAMI based on vulnerability to cholera are agreed upon. The outcome of a successful stakeholder validation is the final list of PAMI with strong buy-in from all parties. To achieve the validation of PAMI in a participative manner, it is recommended that the stakeholder validation be organized in the form of an on-site workshop. Experience shows that a 3-day workshop is ideal to achieve stakeholder validation. A key benefit of hosting the stakeholder validation as an on-site workshop is not only to foster participative discussions. Experience shows that on-site PAMI workshops also encourages collaboration across stakeholders, which is essential for the successful continuation of the NCP process. Critical to a successful PAMI validation workshop is a thorough preparation of this important event. Careful preparation and anticipation are key success factors. Plan ahead to identify relevant stakeholders to be invited. Prepare the agenda. Make sure to send out invitations well in advance to maximize attendance. Make the necessary arrangements for the logistics of the workshop. Prepare the supporting material and the visuals that will be displayed at the workshop. Confirm and brief speakers and facilitators. Do not forget to appoint and to brief a chair, and make sure to identify and to brief note takers. When establishing the list of participants, make sure that the PAMI validation will be as multisectoral as possible. Consider inviting multiple sectors beyond the public health sector, such as WASH, finance, immunization, and so on. It is also advisable to invite representatives from different levels, ensuring that both the national level and subnational levels are represented. Overall, make sure that all organizations and partners that play an active role in cholera control in your country are given a chance to be involved in the PAMI validation. Here is an example of a possible agenda for a PAMI workshop. Of course, this is indicative and is only provided as a basis for customization. The focus of the first day can be to set the scene, as all participants may not yet be familiar with PAMI. As background, updates on the cholera situation in your country can be presented covering the epidemiological situation, the cholera control strategies that have been implemented, along with the progress achieved and the challenges that have been faced. Cholera control pillar specific updates may also be very insightful. Then, you can bring participants up to speed on PAMI identification by walking them through the PAMI identification method. Lastly, present the outcomes of the first phase of PAMI identification, including the priority index and considerations for additional PAMI based on vulnerability factors. Bring up for discussion not only the key findings of the first phase of PAMI identification, but also, and as importantly, their potential limitations. The focus of the second day can be on discussing the list of PAMI in a participative manner. To discuss how to set the priority index threshold, different scenarios can be outlined in a plenary session. Then, these scenarios can be discussed in group sessions. Each group can then report in a plenary session on its thoughts and findings. If additional PAMI based on cholera vulnerability are considered in your country, a similar approach can be followed to discuss additional PAMI, mixing plenary sessions and group sessions. The third and last day of the workshop is the moment to reach an agreement among all participants on the final list of PAMI, and to get organized for next steps. Building on outcomes from Day 2, a consensus should be reached on the priority index threshold as well as, if applicable in your country, a consensus on the list of additional PAMI. The next steps to be organized are the preparation of the report on PAMI identification and of the request for a GTFCC PAMI review. For those, roles and responsibilities should be assigned and timelines should be set. Lastly, the way forward for NCP development should also be discussed as well as, if applicable in your country, the way forward to develop a multi-year plan of action for preventive OCV. As part of the preparation of the PAMI workshop, visuals and supporting material that will be displayed at the workshop should be prepared in advance. At a minimum, this should include supporting material to discuss scenarios for setting the priority index threshold, for example similar to Sheet R3 of the PAMI Excel tool. In addition, shapefiles with priority index values should also be prepared in order to map PAMIs. We will now go through a few tips to run a successful stakeholder validation. The chair and the facilitators play a key role to keep a sound decision-making process on track. This means ensuring that decisions on PAMI are grounded on data and take into account operational implications. To keep a sound decision-making process on track, displaying the supporting material and the visuals prepared ahead of the workshop helps focus the attention and the discussions on data. In addition, the chair and the facilitators should encourage participants not to bring up personal opinions or impressions, but as much as possible documented facts. Lastly, it is essential that the practical and operational dimensions of PAMI identification be carefully considered in the decision-making process, in particular the feasibility of the NCP. Group sessions in breakout are useful tools for a participative and engaging process. Group sessions give all participants greater opportunities to actively engage in the discussions compared to plenary sessions. In addition, group sessions can make the discussions more time-effective by bringing together in a group the participants who have convergent expertise and knowledge. Groups can be formed by cholera prevention and control pillar. This is helpful, for example, to discuss technical and practical considerations. Alternatively, groups can also be formed by regions. This is helpful, for example, to discuss specificities of the local context, in particular to discuss additional PAMI based on local vulnerability factors. For group sessions to be effective and fully beneficial, it is essential that each group be briefed on the objective of the session and be provided with an outline to structure the discussions, such as guiding questions. In addition, a facilitator, a note-taker, and a rapporteur should be designated in each group. Throughout the workshop, discussions, decisions, and justifications for the decisions should be documented for traceability of the decision-making process. Note-takers play a key role in ensuring comprehensive record-keeping. In addition, during the workshop, note-takers also support the chair and facilitators by flagging any decisions made without sufficient justifications. They also keep track of any unresolved discussions and make sure that they get addressed and solved. Note-takers are encouraged to use the Sheet R5 of the PAMI Excel tool to record discussions on specific geographic units. To that end, they may add columns in Sheet R5 as needed. Decisions on PAMI are always made by consensus. We will walk you through the approaches that can facilitate consensus building. Reaching a consensus means that all participants are overall on board with the decisions. At the workshop, a consensus should be reached on three main dimensions. First, the priority index threshold. Then, whether or not there is a need to consider additional PAMI based on vulnerability factors. And, if so, the list of additional PAMI. As a general principle, consensus building is facilitated by objective decision-making grounded on data and operational considerations. This helps keep the decision-making process on tracks, setting aside personal opinions or impressions as well as unrealistic aspirations. To reach a consensus on the priority index threshold, different scenarios are discussed focusing on two dimensions. First, the expected feasibility of the NCP, taking into account the number and the percentage of geographic units that would be PAMI, as well as the number and the percentage of the country population in PAMI, depending on the selected threshold. The other dimension is the potential public health impact of the NCP, taking into account the percentage of cholera cases and the percentage of cholera deaths in PAMI, depending on the selected threshold. Deciding on the threshold focuses on finding the best balance between these two dimensions in the country-specific context. To reach a consensus on whether or not there is a need to consider additional PAMI based on vulnerability factors, the first step is to assess and agree on whether the priority index may underestimate the cholera burden in any specific geographic unit with a priority index below the selected threshold value. If for specific geographic units there are tangible arguments that indicate that the priority index is likely to be less reliable in those units than in other units, then it is relevant to look into their vulnerability to cholera. A consensus should be reached on the list of geographic units which have a priority index value below the selected priority index threshold, and which also have lack of reliability of the priority index. To reach a consensus on the list of additional PAMI, the vulnerability to cholera is considered together with the feasibility of the NCP. Selecting additional PAMI is a prioritization exercise. Geographic units that are most vulnerable to cholera should be prioritized, and the list of additional PAMIs should be narrowed down until implementing multi-sectoral interventions in PAMI, including additional PAMI, is considered realistically feasible. As we wrap up this module, here are the important points to remember. Consensus building on the list of PAMI is driven by the data and by operational considerations. Justifications for all decisions should be documented for traceability of the decision-making process. The collaborative and participative discussions held at the stakeholder validation represent a key opportunity to maximize buy-in and multi-sectoral engagement in the NCP. Before moving on to the next module, we encourage you to take a short quiz. There are 3 questions in this quiz. Question 1. What is an expected benefit of having consensus from all parties on the final list of PAMI? A. It increases confidence that indicators are statistically significant. B. It ensures that all personal opinions and impressions are duly considered. C. It maximizes stakeholder engagement in the future NCP. D. It reduces the need for follow-up training sessions. The correct answer is C. Consensus from all parties on the final list of PAMI maximizes stakeholder engagement in the future NCP. Question 2. Why group sessions might be useful at a stakeholder validation workshop? A. To extend the duration of the workshop. B. To channel convergent expertise and knowledge for more effective discussions. C. To limit the number of participants. D. To create closer bounds between participants. The correct answer is B. Group sessions are a useful tool at the stakeholder validation to help bring together convergent expertise and knowledge in order to have more effective discussions. Question 3. This is the last question. What is the preferred way to assess the vulnerability to cholera of a geographic unit? A. Historical anecdotes. B. Personal opinions. C. Common assumptions about this geographic unit. D. Recent and reliable data sources on vulnerability. The correct answer is D. The preferred way to assess the vulnerability to cholera of a geographic unit is through recent and reliable data sources on vulnerability. We have now completed this module.